Hi, this is Sean Halter, host of the CMO Suite podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and catch up on all the previous episodes at www.thecmosuite.com. Don't forget to visit marketingcasts.com to find even more custom curated marketing podcasts just like this one. That's marketingcasts.com. This episode of the CMO Suite is brought to you by Uconnect. Uconnect provides digital solutions and teams to brand CMOs, VPs, and marketers looking for true transparency in the biddable media space. From paid social and PPC to complex platforms like The Trade Desk, brands from across the world have connected to Uconnect. Visit them today at uconnect.com. And No Kid Hungry. We're proud to promote No Kid Hungry and their many initiatives to help kids in need of meals. Visit them at nokidhungry.org. This episode of the CMO Suite is also brought to you by Winmo. Winmo is the most comprehensive and widely used advertising database, providing an unfair advantage to media and marketing professionals nationwide. Winmo tracks every national advertiser, their agency relationships, and key executives within each organization. Get instant media spend, competitor tracking, and industry trend analysis in one easy-to-use application that integrates with all major CRM platforms. CMO Suite listeners receive complimentary trials of Winmo just by visiting winmo.com/CMO Suite. Finally, the CMO Suite is presented by the CMOcouncil.org as their official marketers podcast. The Chief Marketing Officer Council is the only global network of executives specifically dedicated to high-level knowledge exchange, thought leadership, and personal relationship building among senior corporate marketing leaders and brand decision makers. The CMO Council's 15,000 plus members control more than $550 billion in aggregated annual marketing expenditures and run complex distributed marketing and sales operations worldwide. For more information on membership, visit thecmocouncil.org. Let's start the show.
You're in the CMO Suite, the podcast for marketers who want to be in the know, presented by Connectivity Holdings.
You are listening to the CMO Suite, presented by Connectivity Holdings and Winmo. I am your host, Sean Halter, and I am incredibly excited. I don't want to say this podcast is 4 years in the making, but it's almost 4 years in the making. We are talking today to Leesa Eichberger, who has been a brand marketing executive for many years. Most recently was the head of brand marketing and sponsorship at Farmers Insurance Group, but also spent some time at Jenny Craig. We're going to get into that a little bit, and Vonage, and out on the West Coast. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's great to see you.
It is the chaos of COVID season for us, Leesa. It's pretty crazy. We started season 4, which we are wrapping with just a couple of episodes, and you are one of those. We started back in March, and we recorded a bunch of episodes, and then we held them because we weren't really entirely sure what to do. Everything was going chaotic. And then we held them so long that then we were like, well, we can't run these exactly the way they are now because that's going to sound weird. So then we brought everybody back remotely and did kind of these post parts of the episode. And now I guess I'd say we're fairly caught up. But that said, it has been a little bit kooky. I know it's been crazy in New York. It's certainly been crazy out on the West Coast as well. So how do you feel like you are reassimilating to what is the new normal?
Well, I've always been pretty resilient, so I guess I'm just kind of rolling with it the best I can. I mean, there's certain things that are certainly different. My clothing choices are a big change, and I don't know that I've had on real shoes in 6 months. But
I put on pants yesterday. I was so proud of myself. Crazy. Did you grow up out on the West Coast? I feel like that's where you went to school. So is that where you grew up?
Yeah, I grew up. I'm a Los Angeles native. I lived here most of my life. And then I've spent some time in Atlanta and New Jersey and the East Coast, and managed to kind of work my way back towards the West Coast. But, I love both sides of the country. I haven't spent much time in the middle, but this is home.
So you grew up in LA. Brothers and sisters at all? Only child?
Only child with a half brother.
Okay.
So,
and so how was growing up in Los Angeles? I know you said you did end up spending some time in other parts of the country. Was it just that's kind of what you knew? And so, you headed to the beach on the weekends and you lived that California lifestyle?
My family aren't beach people. I am, although I don't like going to the beach. I'm an ocean swimmer, but I don't ever go to the beach except for to walk across it and get in the water. Growing up here, I mean, I think wherever you grow up, you don't know any different. I mean, we grew up without winters and without seasons. So that was, when I first moved to the East Coast, I was like a toddler trying to figure out how to deal with snow. But
you said you're an ocean swimmer. I feel like you may have told me once before. So do you do triathlons, or had you done triathlons in the past?
Yeah, I am. This season has been shot for everybody for any sort of athletic racing and competition. But yeah, I'm triathlete.
My waist can tell you that. Yes, I haven't been able to
All of
go.
us, all of
Yeah,
us.
yeah.
But yeah, just somehow this year has been a big swimming year. Once the beaches opened back up in May, we've been in the water pretty much constantly. I've been swimming as much as 10 miles a week in the ocean. So it's been a big swim year.
So I used to run when my knees could hold out. I did one triathlon, and the swimming was just the hardest part. And the ocean is crazy compared to swimming, training in a pool of some sort. It's not the same. So kudos to you for being able to navigate it. That's for sure.
Well, thank you.
Do you feel like in some ways that's a part of your personality? Is that kind of when you determine to do something, you just jump in the water and swim your way through it?
That's an interesting question, and I do feel like it's a huge part of my personality. I've done a couple Ironman distance triathlons, and
Those are no joke.
it's a 2.4 mile swim, 112-mile bike ride, and a 26-mile run. And when you say that out loud, it just sounds kind of stupid and impossible. And before you've ever done one, it is almost stupid and impossible. But when I compare that to the rest of things you do in life, it's like any massive project. You build a plan, you work the plan, and by the time you get to the end of it, if you've done things as you have intended, you achieve it. And so it's been something for me that's really been great at setting goals and helping me know I can kind of get through whatever.
And maybe that resiliency is something we're all trying to navigate and learn through what this year is, because none of us, look, any of us that have any seasoning on us of any years, we've been through some good times and some bad times.
Right.
Nothing like this. So it's even been hard to kind of know how to prep for this to some extent. But I think the point you made, even just a few minutes in on this, is a very relevant point, which is even when something seems so daunting, even when you say something out loud, like, there's no way I can accomplish this. It's too big. It's too grand. It's not going to happen. I'm never going to get, Leesa on my podcast. It's just not going to happen. Then you just persevere. You work your way through it. You remember most days to call it Farmers Insurance and not the other one that's out there in the marketplace, although I've been guilty of both sometimes. But do you feel like that is also what's going to help put you in a position that there's nothing you can't accomplish, whatever that next step is for you in this industry? You figure it out, you build your plan, and you navigate through it?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's it's a combination of perseverance and then flexibility. Going back to the athletic analogy, I mean, things get in the way, life gets in the way, injuries happen, things change. COVID, there are things that just change your trajectory, but they don't need to change your ability or your confidence to keep going through. And, what I can't remember the war quote, but, when you're going through hell, keep going. I should know who that is, Churchill, right? And I think that's, I think that's, kind of how a lot of us are dealing with this COVID scenario. I think, it's how you get through any massive change in a business scenario when, you have a competitive threat that comes up you're not expecting. You have to pivot. You have to make new decisions. But you also have to kind of keep your eye on the end game and make sure you're working towards a goal and have a plan on how to get there.
And my dad would always say, "Don't look back. Just whatever it is, don't look back. Keep going. Whatever it is in front of you."
Right.
You've been on both sides of this industry to some extent. You spent a little bit of time as an account executive at Ogilvy, and what caused you to decide maybe you wanted to jump into a different direction, to be more on the client facing side? Do you remember back to those days a little bit?
I do. I started at Poppy Tyson, a division of Bozell, way back in the day, and I think they're long gone. And then went to Ogilvy, and I absolutely loved the advertising industry. My mother tells me stories when I was like just a little kid. I would sing the Burger King jingle in my sleep. I love jingles. I love ads. I've always just kind of loved the whole space. And I was working for Ogilvy. I was working on the Pac Bell Mobile Services account, which at the time was the launch of Pac Bell, their mobile phones. Back in the days when in Los Angeles penetration of cell phones was at 9%. If you can imagine, only 1 in 9 people having a phone.
What's a cell phone?
Yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy. And the New York office of Ogilvy pitched and won a competitive account, and the Los Angeles, a bigger account. So Los Angeles had to resign Pac Bell. And they let go everyone on the team except me. And I had tremendous survivor's guilt, but I was there, I think, really just to wind down the billing. And then I got put on new business, and I worked on some other stuff briefly. And Pac Bell called and said, "Hey, do you want to come work for us as an advertising manager?" And I went, "Huh." Client side work had never really crossed my mind, but it was like, okay, what the heck? And then they told me kind of the difference in pay between client and agency. And I went, that's even more interesting.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah. And so, I switched over to the dark side, or whatever you want to call it. And I, about 3 days in, realized this job I'd loved my whole life, I hated it. Like, Ogilvy was lovely. I had loved advertising. And then I went client side, and I'm like, this is so much better for me. For me, it was the ability to really have more control over my destiny. And as an agency person, I think, great client agency relationships, you've got the agency built in on the strategy and in on the planning and in on everything. That's not always the case. And especially as kind of a junior account person, you just kind of get up in the morning, whatever plans you've laid out. If the client says jump, you say, okay, and you jump a different direction from what you'd planned in the morning.
You got to sell it through.
Yeah. So I
yeah.
ended up loving the client side. And, I'll never say never. I could potentially end up someday back on the agency side. Sure. But I'd certainly want to be working with clients that treat their agencies as a partner. And, that's one of the things I've always tried to do as an agency or as a client, on the other side of the fence. But it's a different relationship.
It's funny you brought up the jingle piece. I talked to, obviously, a lot of marketers. A lot of us have that as an embedded part of our childhood, though, that those jingles, as much as some people may feel like the time maybe has already passed for a jingle to resonate. I was telling somebody the other day, I watched more for the commercials sometimes than the shows I was watching, and they do still impact. And certainly I'm assuming that you found as much when you were at Farmers.
I am a huge believer in, call them mnemonics or call them, audio branding. There's, a bunch of different names for them. But I find them to be an easy way to be memorable and to be consistent. And yeah, Farmers, we are farmers, sticks in everyone's head.
We are farmers, bum, 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 bum.
In my Vonage days, one of the things I did was I brought back the woohoo, woohoo, which, if you know the Vonage ads, that will now be in your head for the rest of the day. And I'm sorry.
It's a lot.
Yeah, exactly. But it's, it's a little bit of a cheat, maybe, but at the same time, it's memorable. And as long as it's likable, I think it really works to help build a brand and to create continuity. And especially, I think as we move, heck, you and I are here, we are on a podcast, right? We're moving to a more audio environment. It's almost like we're going back in time when you used to listen to like the radio shows, but audio is huge again. And, when you think about, I don't want to say her name out loud because she'll talk back to me, but Alexa, everything's audio. So there's a lot of value in maintaining those audio brands. And I think a lot of brands are doing a really, really nice job with it.
A few things to unpack there. First of all, the poor kid whose name is Alexa,
right. She's going to talk if you say it too loud. And oh no, I'm on a headset. She won't hear you. Good.
Running around. Not sure if the parents are yelling at her or the or what it is. Siri's the same way. I was trying to get something to work last night. I had the wrong Siri operating, but you talked about the basically audio, and that's something that I do feel like brands don't spend nearly enough time on. I'm friends with Allison Griffin, who was over at Intel for quite a while, and obviously,
great.
That's a great example of the same thing. We spend so much time these days in a digital world and in attribution and looking at reports and making sure we've got the right dashboards, and those are all relevant. But damn, if a 5 or 6 second little clip of some audio can't just create memorability that is free to some extent, that people want to push out, that people can just hear, 5 seconds and know the name of the brand. And perhaps it's a little bit of a lost art. I'm not sure. So,
right. Yeah. I think it's an art. I also think there's a challenge in not overexposing, and it's finding that right balance. I just read an article, I think yesterday in one of the trades, that Netflix has one of the most memorable little sounds, but given the pandemic and people's binge watching, people have kind of burned out on it. And so it's finding where's the right place to put it, and do you modify it a little? That was one of the things we did at Vonage, was we played with it some, and even at Farmers, we would occasionally just play with it a little. Once it's known, you can do that.
Hell, I'm so old that the AOL thing still sticks.
You've got mail.
I mean, oh my God, if you didn't hear that, that was like, that was the precursor to social media that these kids don't understand. You get a like or a comment on your social media page and you think you've won. We used to all sit by these computers and we'd hear that noise. I got an email. Could you
Right.
imagine that now? I mean,
Uh,
oh my God, it'd go off 500 times. We would be banging our heads, against a piece of glass and be happier about it.
there
Just
are people in my life
crazy.
who have the little ding when they get an email, and I don't understand, but maybe they just don't get enough email.
And so talk to me a little bit about your time after that. It looks like you made your way to Vonage. What was the journey from cellular over to Vonage like, and why did you land there specifically?
I had some interesting kind of steps along the way. And I think of one of those, I guess, I don't even know if it would be considered a meme. It's an old graph, but there's a thing that I've seen where it says, success is this line that goes up and to the right. And that's what people think. And then the reality is success is this, twirly noodle that looks like one of those straws that we used to have as kids with all the twists and turns and the things that took you on a journey that actually got you to your end game. And I think, my time between Singular, AT&T, whatever brand you want to call it, and Vonage and Farmers, there are a bunch of steps along the way that really helped me learn who I am and what I like and what I'm good at. And I've enjoyed the journey. So, I left Singular. I think it may have been AT&T at that point. I went to a wireless startup called Helio. It was a small startup. Interesting enough with it was a joint venture between the guys who founded AOL and who founded
There you go.
SK Telecom. And that was an adventure. It was a wireless startup. It was during a period where there were over 100 wireless startups in the marketplace. And we were aimed at the Korean youth market. I mean, that's how many niche markets there were. And, it was the Wild West, and it was a wild ride. And I stayed on with them until their launch. And then I left and took just a little bit of a break. And then I actually went back to the agency side for kind of a hot minute in a sales role. My dad's always kind of helped influence my career. And one of the things he's said to me is, honey, you need to try your hand at sales. And so I said, okay, I'll try this new business gig. It'll be at an ad agency. One of their clients at the time was Verizon. It felt very safe. It was an ad agency. It was, they had wireless. I kind of got the space, and I, tried to, my hand at this new business. And I did a pretty darn good job at it. And I hated it. I mean, I'm just not, I'm not a salesperson at heart. And so I left that role, and I actually took a little break from corporate America, and I was consulting and, doing some contract work, but I also worked as a personal trainer at an Equinox.
That's great.
And I loved it. I knew it wasn't a long-term career, but it was an opportunity for me to do something totally different. At one point in my life, I've always been very athletic, and I thought maybe I'll, open a gym. And working in a gym, I realized, nope, I don't want to open a gym. So again, I was trying my hand at things, and I feel like I'm so lucky, or I mean, I'm kind of a believer in making your own luck, but lucky that I've had the ability to test things, for myself and try them and not just do stuff because I'm doing it. So, I tried my hand at sales. I tried my hand kind of, could I open a gym? None of those things made a lot of sense. And so while I was working at this gym and consulting on the side, I was doing a lot of really fun work with a bunch of different companies. The CMO of Singular had become the CEO of Vonage. And he called me up and he's like, I know when you moved to Atlanta, you weren't loving Georgia, but would you consider coming to New Jersey for 8 weeks for a marketing project? And I said, sure. So I took a leave of absence from the personal training gig, which, whatever that was. And next thing I knew, 8 weeks turned into 4 years. And I was working as the vice president of marketing at Vonage, and loved it. Loved New Jersey, loved the job. And that was my next shift.
You talked in the middle there again, just about giving yourself a chance to be able to test and try. And I think sometimes we don't give ourselves enough of that. If you're very driven, it's hard because you're so driven. The wheel doesn't stop. You have to stay on it. But if there's anything I feel like I've seen from COVID on the positive side, it's that a lot of people, either through circumstances or through opportunity, have had to just stop for a moment and reassess and realize, the world will still travel on, even if I'm not in this specific position. At the same time, what a chance to be able to just re-level set ourselves to some extent and reset. That's right. So hard when you become a person in a certain kind of position, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're in a high position at a company and you've got people underneath you. it's hard to be able to sometimes just go, I just don't want to do this anymore. There's so many people that are relying upon you that you feel this sense of guilt. And
Yeah.
man,
Yeah.
that's a hard thing. Guilt is such a crazy thing in our lives that we don't give ourselves enough chance to be able to say, let me just reset. So it's,
Well, and I think ego too. I mean, there's guilt
oh
and
yeah,
there's ego, and then there's the practicality of it. I say I was lucky that I was able to do some of this stuff. I've also always been financially conservative, and as a result, I had a good backstop. And it's something, when I'm talking to especially younger women and mentoring, it's like, save some money, have that little, I call it an FU fund. Have the ability to not be trapped by something you hate. And that was when I left the ad agency job that was kind of the in-between job that was in that sales role. I didn't like what I was doing. And if I hadn't had a little cash in the bank, I would have been stuck every day going in, doing something I really did not enjoy. And instead, I was able to take that step back, reset, think about what's next. And then also, kind of at the time, it actually took swallowing my pride to go and take a personal training job. I mean, and I did it for very logical reasons, but I'll tell you, there were people who looked down their noses at me and said, oh, you left this executive job as a vice president and blah, blah, blah. And now you're personal training. It's like, there's no shame in that. Like I loved what I was doing. I was learning, I was doing something new, and I was flexing different muscles. And I don't regret it for 1 second, but
I hope more
it was
executives
different.
take the chance to be able to, again, allow themselves to do many of the things that you just said. And even to your extent, talking to younger people in marketing, whether they be female or male, or, saving a bit, not
Mm-hmm.
having to live up to what you think everybody else's expectations are. I mean, look, our business is no different. We've had to adapt around the world of COVID and clients changing what they're doing. But thank goodness my father instilled in me, save, because saving is what has allowed us to not just have to take every single piece of business that's out there. Desperation
Right.
is a horrible thing. If you have the chance to be able to just live a normal life, try to put a little money in the bank, it will save you in those moments when perhaps you want to be able to pivot and give you the chance to not have to be miserable. You spent also a little bit of time at Jenny Craig, and how was that stop for you? Because that was back in California.
It was. Jenny Craig was just such a great opportunity. I'd been at Vonage for about 4 years. I loved my job. I wasn't looking. I was, doing what I thought was really good work. We won, a gold lion for some of the advertising we were doing, which was just, fun. And we were driving the business, and things were going really, really well. And a recruiter called me, for this CMO job in San Diego in kind of that health and wellness space, which, again, my personal passion lies, to a certain extent, at least from a personal perspective, in that fitness, health, wellness. And I really couldn't walk away from it. And, one of the pluses also was that Jenny Craig at the time was owned by Nestle. And I really loved the idea of getting some of that classical, Nestle marketing training, which, to me really appealed.
Nestle and Mondelez, it's so crazy. There's so many people that I talk to that have come through just those two companies,
Right. Well, P&G, right? I
yeah,
mean, that's
yeah,
like some of the classic marketing training.
yeah.
And I've worked for a couple of guys who are P&G, brand managers in their early days, and I feel like I kind of got that P&G training, and I wanted to learn a little bit about the Nestle side. I took the job. It was a ton of fun. It was, the company was in need of turnaround, and the brand, I think, had, it was a dated brand, and we had an opportunity to do some really great work. Unfortunately for me, Nestle sold the brand to private equity. And as part of that, they already had a leadership team in place. And I opted to take a package, and again, took a little break, traveled, did an Ironman, went around the world, and, I worked in a bike shop for a couple of months because I wanted to learn how to actually repair my own bike. And of course, the bike shop wouldn't let me anywhere near the mechanics section. So that was, like, I don't know, 8 weeks or something. I was like, okay, well, that was interesting, but it kept me from being bored and lonely. And then I hunkered down, and going back to that whole, making sure you're doing the right thing. I actually hired a career coach, and I spent a couple of months with a woman, just really going through, what do I want to do when I grow up? And at that point I was pretty well grown up, but what's the right thing? What do I love? What am I good at? And, I think the really good news is it came back that marketing is where my heart really is. And, we investigated all kinds of different paths that had interest to me. And that was what, we just came back around. And so she helped me. And one of the things that was, I think, the best learning from that time with her was I created kind of a checklist of the things I had to have in my next job, the things I wanted to have in my next job, and then the things that were deal breakers. Like I just couldn't do it. And I think like a lot of ambitious people, I would just kind of chase the next shiny object while I was looking for that next gig. And I wanted, I really wanted the right job. And I feel that way always. Like I don't want to be in a job just to make a living. So she helped me kind of create that list. And a recruiter called me about the gig at Farmers. And I mean, it really ticked just about every box except category, because insurance was something that had like never crossed my mind. And I did kind of hem and haw on that a bit. And I decided that it was worth, kind of jumping in and took the Farmers gig.
We'll spend a little time on Farmers in a second, but I want to stay on the career coach piece, because I think sometimes, look, if you're on a bike and you fall and you break your arm, you go to the doctor. If you're swimming and something happens, but we don't give ourselves, I don't know why that is, we don't give ourselves enough opportunity to have professional coaching in our own lives, whether that's counseling or whether that's professional coaching. There still seems sometimes to be this stigma, like, why are you doing that? But my God, it's, our brains are the most delicate things of anything in our body, but we often don't spend nearly enough time in having somebody help us navigate our way and focus through that. And so kudos to you for doing the piece that you did, because again, it sounds like it was a tune-up that you needed.
Well, and the interesting thing I think that helped with that was while I was at Vonage, and then again while I was at Jenny Craig, the leadership team had coaches, and we had brought people in to help us. Yeah, I think it's so interesting that, as you're growing in your career, there's a lot of, there's the opportunities to learn up until a certain point. And then once you hit kind of maybe even director or vice president level, a lot of companies, they go, oh, you know how to manage, you know how to do this. And you don't necessarily. A lot of times you've just been really, really good at doing your job, but you're not necessarily good at managing other people, or you're not really good at communicating, or you don't realize the style you're communicating in may not work for everybody that works for you. And so I really appreciated that, I've worked at a couple of places that took the time and spent the money and put the effort and the hard work in to teaching us how to be better leaders and not just be really good at our job and then promote you and hope you can lead. And that I think helped me feel really comfortable in, I can call someone and look for guidance and get some outside help. And I think it's like, seeing a therapist if you're going through a really bad patch. There's no shame in that, right? In fact, it's the right thing to do. And we're all expected to work on ourselves. You can't always do it by yourself. So
without the tools sometimes, which is crazy, So you ended up at Farmers. You were there for almost 5 years. And tell me a little bit about your time there. What did you like?
Farmers was a fabulous experience. I think one of the most eye-opening parts of it was coming into work for a new boss who knew me, through reputation and through the interview process, but he had just confidence in me. And gave me a lot of autonomy. And again, it was a really good learning experience for me as a leader on how to manage, because I looked at, the kind of the runway he gave me to try things. And, we had the ability and the opportunity to do some really great creative work. Before I started at Farmers, they had done some research that, like what's the biggest brand attribute of Farmers? And I think the first thing that came to mind for most people was boring. And, over the 5 years, not quite 5 years, but that I was there, I think we really shifted that perception. And, it was an opportunity that, that I was given to move the brand. And I had, a fabulous agency relationship with RPA. They're a great shop, and I treated them, I think, as a partner, and I believe they would second that. And that relationship and that ability to, have a great team at Farmers, have the respect and the confidence from my leadership, and then the team that reported into me and worked with me having, a great skill set and being really strong and working hard, and then a terrific agency partnership. We developed some work that, I'm incredibly proud of. And, we won a handful of Effies. And in fact, we won a sustained Effie that I think gets announced today as far as what level of Effie that was for, the longevity of great work. And we became part of the cultural zeitgeist. I mean, we were on talk shows, and you've got Neil Patrick Harris singing the Farmers song when J.K. Simmons wins an Oscar. I mean, there's the song and the creative is something people love and welcome into their homes. And I think that's something that in the advertising space and in the marketing space, there's just so much noise. And yeah, brand is something that right now it feels like it's a dirty word, and it shouldn't, because even the best performance work, you have to want to see it, or you're going to ignore it. And so I feel like, I think the pendulum is going to start swinging back, where people recognize that, the value of performance, if an ad doesn't perform, it doesn't matter if it ran or not. But if nobody wants to see it and actively avoid it, you're not going to, it won't perform. So it's marrying those things.
You could buy 1 billion impressions, and if it doesn't, resonate with
Right.
people, then all you've done is buy 1 billion impressions. So
Right.
question, what's next for you? As you've departed Farmers, where do you feel like you're headed next?
I'm really just looking for somewhere that's going to, use my skill set of kind of where that intersection of brand and demand, and where I have the, the flexibility and the freedom to kind of stretch out what I'm doing. And I don't know what's next for sure. I like the idea of being a little bit fluid and making sure that the right thing is there. So I haven't put this must be the next job. The goal is just to do something I love.
Last question. Best advice you feel like you've been given?
I worked for my boss at Farmers when I got there. Michael Linton was somebody who gave me, like I said, the autonomy and really acted as a mentor. And more than once he would say, basically, why are you asking me? Like you know the answer to this, and it's trust yourself. And I always appreciated that confidence, and I think that sort of advice is what I also give other people. Don't wait for somebody else to make the decision for you. Get other people's opinions, but then trust yourself.
Trust yourself. Great advice as we wrap this episode of the CMO Suite. Leesa, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you, Sean.
Thanks for hanging out in the CMO Suite, the podcast for marketers who want to be in the know, presented by Connectivity Holdings.
You're a C-level manager. You shouldn't have to know the difference between behavioral or contextual targeting, but your agency should. Uconnect provides brands and biddable teams direct access to platforms like The Trade Desk, Google, Amazon, Facebook, OTT, and more. Their US-based traders can train your in-house team or provide complete transparency with no minimums and CPM-based service pricing for true transparency. Something Mighty Hive, The Trade Desk, and Centro simply don't offer. Tired of being the smartest one in the room? Reach out to Uconnect today for a free demo. Uconnect, the world's leader in true transparent biddable media.
This episode of the CMO Suite is also brought to you by Winmo. Winmo is the most comprehensive and widely used advertising database, providing an unfair advantage to media and marketing professionals nationwide. CMO Suite listeners receive complimentary trials of Winmo just by visiting winmo.com/CMO Suite.